Hey, welcome to the 12th edition of Peep Show Talk. And I'm very excited today about our guest. And I bet many of you know the voice, but you don't know the face, especially if you own a Dodge Power Wagon, WC, M37, any of those series. So today I feel very fortunate to have Stephen Arndt from Vintage Power Wagons on here. Say hi, Steve.
Hello, everyone.
So, Steve, I understand that you've been at Vintage a while, and things are going to come to an end here soon for you there.
Yeah, I'm going to taper it. Actually, I've been working with the guys for many years, but I've told them over the last couple of years that about the time I'm going to say November-ish, I'm probably going to maybe pull back and maybe I'll work a couple days a week. But at that point, I'm not going to work full time anymore.
Okay. So, when did you start out at Vintage?
I started in full time in February of 1990. So this next month it'll be 32 years since I began working for the company.
Hmm. Wow, that's 3 decades. That's quite a while.
It is
Um,
quite a while. It actually amazes me. I would have never guessed.
yeah. So exactly how did you get on at Vintage Power Wagons?
Well, the story kind of goes like this. My dear wife, Melinda, knew the founder of the company, which is David Butler. And we would actually bump into each other on social occasions. And in passing, David said to me on a couple of occasions, someday I'm going to have you come to work for me. So in late January of 1990, I was home for lunch and I was actually working with another company, taking care of something for them. And there was a rap at the door and it was David.
Wow, you got
He's,
recruited at home, huh?
yeah, I was home at lunch and there was a rap at the door and he said, I want you to come to work for me. I need you. And so we sat down and we talked for not that long because it was lunch hour. And I went back to the company I've been with, and I gave them my notice that I was going to be done in 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And then the whole thing kind of began. David and I got together on evenings and weekends for the period between that little gathering of the two of us till I started working full time. And I took notes. I had a notebook, and we would go around, and we began with working with kind of defining differences, unique things about a lot of the old trucks. And I was, in school. I was in Dodge Power Wagon school,
Hmm.
and because I had no experience at that point of Power Wagons, he said, you know what I want to have you do? He said, I want to have you work in the parts packing room where we ship parts. So you have been there, so you know that when you walk in the door, you walk right into the office.
Right.
Okay, now that office area right there when you walk in, that used to be shipping. And so he said, I want you in there and I want you to pay attention, to listen while I'm on the phone and you're packing packages, and see what we can learn. And then we would spend time after hours and we would go over things. And David, of course, he's got a real unique gift. David has been a Power Wagon junkyard dog all of his life. And so he can't keep himself from going out and checking places where he'd heard about there was some trucks or there was a stash of parts. And he would, he would take off. And when he would take off, he said, now, when you're not shipping parts back there, come on in, sit on the desk. And when the phone rings, just answer the phone and talk to the customer and see what they want. And he said, now you're not going to know a whole lot about some of these parts and things they're asking about. He said, just take good notes. And he said, get with me. We'll talk about it. And then you'll call them back.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how it all started. And we did this back and forth a lot. until, over as the months and a year or so rolled by, I was starting to get an idea on these old trucks. And it was challenging because, of course, we work with about 30 years worth of trucks.
Right.
So there's, I don't know how many parts amongst 30 years worth of trucks you can get into, but there's a lot of them. So that's kind of how it all started. I never knew that or guessed that I would be doing something like what I've been doing for the past 32 years. The only thing that felt really great was when I first started working with David, I felt like I was at home. I was in an environment that somehow that if I could have asked for a fit like a glove, it fit like a glove.
Mm-hmm.
And I never understood until that point that when I was a little kid, I would spend my spare time when I wasn't goofing around playing with minor wrenching on bicycles, which is kind of what I started playing with.
Mm-hmm.
I would be buying model cars and things like that and putting them together.
Mm-hmm.
I would be reading Carcraft magazine, Hot Rod magazine, all these different, vehicle type things. So I had an interest in it. I didn't grow up getting a chance to do a lot of wrenching, and it just wasn't something I got a lot of opportunity to do. But I found out when I first started working with David, and he would explain things to me, that I could conceptualize how things worked and what made sense and what didn't make sense. And that's kind of the path that I had to follow in terms of learning these old power wagons and kind of what you need to know about putting one back together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what kind of work did you do before that, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in southern Minnesota,
Okay.
and
Oh,
so
geez.
what's that?
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So I grew up 300 miles north of here,
Mm-hmm.
in where winter is about 4 weeks longer than it is down here. So I'm happy that we don't have as long a winter. But I started off, I started off out of high school. I was one of those kids that when we went to high school, I wasn't totally interested in a lot of the things that they were having me do. So I found a way to basically shorten my time by joining what was called Distributive Education Clubs of
Mm-hmm.
America.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay. And it sets you on a particular tract. Mine was a tract that had to do with working with business. And so my senior year of high school.
Well, you might want to explain exactly what that is, or maybe I can. My understanding of distributive education was where you would go to school, I think, half time, and then you'd spend the other half of the day working in a business. So it may have been like a shoe store, it may have been an auto business, it may have been some other kind of organization, so that you could gain skills and then step right in there.
Right. It was kind of the on-the-job training and learning for kids who were not, weren't as inclined to be other subjects, So I started actually working in a place called the Haberdashery, which is a men's clothing store.
Okay.
So I learned men's clothing. That was kind of my thing at the time. And when I graduated from high school, I wasn't inclined to go to college. It wasn't really my interest, and I didn't have enough experience with vocational background. I didn't get to take a lot of shop classes and things like that. And I think if I had, I may have been maybe something in that tract as well. So I decided I'd go to business school. So I went to the Minnesota School of Business in downtown Minneapolis, and basically that was taking essentially the 2 years of upper division classwork you would take for a BA in business in 12 months. So it was a crash course. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it. I felt like it was something that interested me. I definitely pushed myself very hard in the process of doing that, because I also partway into the school year, to support myself, I actually worked about 40 hours a week, and then still went to school full time. So it was pretty challenging. But then when I got out, I went back to the clothing store where I'd started work, and they offered me an assistant manager job. And within probably 6 months, I realized this wasn't going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And my father, who worked for a company there at home, that they had sales reps out, and they had a line of gifts that they sold. So if you went to like a little gift shop, or sometimes even into a drugstore, a hardware store, sometimes they had a little gift section. And they had a line of gifts, plus they were repping for other companies who had other things, whether it was a clock line, a lamp line, a wooden products line, whatever. And he had said, well, there's no sales rep in Eastern Iowa. And he dropped that in my ear, a couple of times. And finally, at the end of that kind of 6-8 months working back at the clothing store, I asked Dad, I said, is that job, do you think that'd still be open down there? And he said, I think so. So I got a hold of the owner of the company, and I got a real eye-opening. I thought, because I had busted my butt so hard in school and did well, that this was something that would be, kind of my little flag to run up on my little pole. Well, I learned real quick that his idea was, I'm not real interested in what you did in the past. I'm interested in what you want to do now.
Right. And what you're going to do for me in the future.
Yeah, what you're going to do for me. It was a real wake-up call. It's kind of a little quick slap to the back of the head. And he said, I'll take you out, and we'll go out for a couple of weeks on the road, and we'll start traveling and hitting accounts. So we did. We went down into Eastern Iowa, and we traveled for a couple of weeks, visiting accounts that hadn't been visited in a long time. And now, my boss at that point, he was, I'll say technically, and I had a sales background since I was a little kid, so I can say technically he was a very, very good sales guy. I mean, he could sell you, things that you wouldn't even think you'd want to buy.
Right.
But he could do it. He was good that way. But after I had been with him for 2 weeks, I took off on my own, and it was tough going because I had no active accounts. But I learned real quick that when I came back to the accounts that we had first visited with him, that there was a lesson to learn. And the lesson was a little bit painful, but I learned it, and I'm thankful that I learned it, because what I learned was that, yeah, you can be a really good sales guy and you can sell people all kinds of stuff, but that's not what it's all about. That's not what the job of the sales guy is. The job of the sales guy, I learned, was to take care of the customer, to put yourself in his shoes. So after a while, I learned that when I was walking into any customer, I would quickly explain, this is the way it works. If you do well, I do well. So when I set foot in the door, my job is to work for you. Because if I don't, you're not going to do well. And this whole thing is not going to work very well for you or for me. So that was kind of the lesson that was brought home to me, thankfully, basically, because my boss had a little different way of doing things. And I've tried, over the years, when I work with customers, I try to put myself in their shoes and learn about them and figure out kind of what it is they want to do. And hopefully I can advise them, to help them out so that they can actually have those dreams come true, which is what we get all excited about at Vintage Power Wagons,
Right. So you're selling basically on a route. Well, not really a route, but you've got this sort of steady string of businesses that you're hitting in Eastern Iowa. So how do you end up in Fairfield?
Well, after about 4 years of traveling, and geez, I got tired. I got tired of basically taking off Monday morning and getting back, at 5 or 7 or whatever on Friday. And at that point, in Eastern Iowa, there were an awful lot of, well, I'll call them hole in the wall little hotels, places I wouldn't go to anymore. And I certainly wouldn't bring my wife to. And, and then the restaurants and the food sometimes was good, sometimes wasn't good. I'd try to make, take some things with me and sometimes even make stuff in a hotel room. So to actually get something halfway decent. But I would come to Fairfield, Iowa, and Fairfield, Iowa is a unique little town, as you know. And every time I came to Fairfield, I enjoyed it. Now, probably the reason I enjoyed it more than some would enjoy it is that in my days of going to business school, when I was really pushing myself, I learned to meditate. I learned transcendental meditation. And one of the things that I experienced was I was so tired when I was pushing myself. Sometimes I'd sit down to meditate and basically I would just fall asleep. And sometimes I'd wake up several hours later, almost disorientated because I was so tired and so much fatigue came out of me. Well, when I would visit Fairfield, of course, as you know from visiting here, has a large population of people who learned transcendental meditation. And I felt kind of at home, and the people that I would meet, I enjoyed it. I also liked the fact that it was a small community. I grew up in a town called Waseca, Minnesota, which is about the same size as Fairfield. It's, it was probably about 8,000, maybe a little bit more, 8,500 in its heyday where I grew up. Fairfield, I think when I moved here was probably maybe 9,000. Now it's probably closer to 10,000 people. So being a small town guy, growing up in a small town, this felt a lot more at home to me than living in Cedar Rapids, which is where I was living logistically for my, business when I was traveling as a sales rep. It made good sense logistically.
Yeah, you're kind of centered in your area.
Yeah, I was centered, so it made some sense. But after I finished, 4 years, I just said, you know what, I'm just not going to do it anymore. At the end of the season, normally what would happen for guys that were doing that kind of a job, usually by the time you got to first part of November, you had pretty well already had all the orders that you were going to get for people to have them, stocked up for the Christmas holiday season. And so if you wanted to stop and see somebody, it was going to be a hi howdy handshake kind of thing. You weren't really going in there to try and sell them anything because number one, they're too busy. And, so there was no point. So most of us, by the time early November quit, we just kind of knocked off until after Christmas. So it was a good time of the year just to call it quits. And that's what I did. And I explored coming down here, and I'd been down here several times over the years that I'd been here. And I'd gotten offers to do different jobs and some people that I met. And I worked in several different companies, and kind of for the first couple of years, I actually went back to school. After I'd gone to business school, as I got older, I thought, it would be kind of fun to take and do a BA and go 4 years to college. I thought that was kind of be a neat experience to do. So I did. I went back to college at the university here, which is, for those people who don't know, it's a 4-year liberal arts college, and it's on the block system, which is different. Basically the idea that the founder had and the leading academic people here at the college had was, kids can learn, but they sometimes learn better if they're not taking multiple subjects at the same time.
Right. So you just take one class for a short period of time and you immerse yourself into it, then you move on to the next one.
And they had a program for that, and I enjoyed it. Well, I actually took I majored in what's called Law, Government, and Public Affairs, which is essentially a political science major. And I did my internship in Washington, D.C., which cured me of ever wanting to work in politics.
Yeah.
but it was a nice, I will say this, that particular background was not, it had its, I'd say some value in terms of working with business. There's a bit of politics in every business,
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who's ever worked in business will tell you that. So I did gain value from that experience, and I got to go 4 years, and went back to school 4 years. And then I worked, like I say, after I got out of college, I worked for an import furniture company in Chicago. And that was a real interesting experience because let's just say the way that they designed the business to do it was how do you kind of like, I'll call it guerrilla selling. I worked for a man who was a college student, and he actually had a connection with a man who imported Oriental furniture from Macau, from Hong Kong, from Korea, Taiwan, all kinds of places. And he would order containers of furniture. I'm talking 20 or a 40-foot container full of brand new furniture from over there. And then what he would do was he knew enough people that he had met, and he thought they were doing a little kind of a crazy way of selling furniture. And that was, they were doing it via having what we would call a garage sale. They were literally taking brand new furniture out to some friends, people out in suburbia, setting up a garage with brand new Oriental furniture. But it was actually quite scientific. They had scoped out the area using a very simple technique where basically the traffic areas that they could draw traffic to the garage sale with big cardboard signs, they were counting cars in those high traffic areas. And if 1 or 2 in 10 cars was a car that you knew that was a high-end car, then you had a strong possibility that some of those people had enough extra cash that if they would stop at a garage sale, they would drop $100 or $200 or whatever, buying brand new furniture. And they were getting it at a really good price compared to finding it in a retail store.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about 1.5 years, and it worked out pretty well until we kind of got closed down because technically it's illegal.
Minor details, right?
Minor details. Yeah, technically it's illegal.
Minor details. You can't run a furniture business out of garage sales.
No, you can't run a retail establishment out of a residential zoned neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not legal. So we moved on, and we basically did, we rented commercial space in buildings, which that was an okay thing, but it didn't work as well, and things like that. So, and I did that, and I'd saved enough money. I took off and I went to Europe for a month and had some fun there. And I came back to Fairfield, and I had job offers from people that wanted me to come to work for them, and did several different things until, like I say, one day when Dave knocked on the door, and
the rest is history, huh?
And the rest is history. And of course, in the process, I also got married, and and all that kind of thing too happened. So yeah.
Okay,
So then
so you're answering the phone and taking notes for Dave and talking to Dave and calling him back and packing boxes and stuff. And then sort of what has your job become?
Well, my job has actually become I spend my day essentially on the phone taking calls. I answer emails, which we get emails from all over the place. We also have on our website what's called a parts request form. So people fill out, actually it's kind of like ordering that way. And then there's basically a back and forth communication that has to take place whenever that happens, just to make sure that, we're all on the same page and that we all have the information that's needed. lot of those parts requests are US customers, but I also get a lot of them that are overseas. And when I get overseas customers, those are ones that we certainly want to make sure that we do things right, because you don't want to have mistakes when there's 5, 6, 7,000 miles between you and the
Right. It's not
customer.
like they can just drop it in the mail and send it right back to you.
Yeah.
So I think the first time I met you, which you wouldn't remember, I dropped by there maybe about 2003, and I think it was maybe you and Dave were the two people on the phone, and was that about
Uh,
it? And Dave
yeah.
was kind of running around doing other stuff sometimes. Is that fair?
Yep.
And
That's
then nowadays there's what, three of you?
There are 3 of us that are on the phone, Matt, Jens, and myself, and then Tyra in the office. Tyra can handle a certain amount of things too.
Hmm.
She's done a really good job for us. And yeah, so it's, grown in terms of the number of calls that we have to take and the number of emails we have to answer and
Hmm.
parts requests, et cetera. And then with each additional customer, there's just more time that you have to spend. I don't mind, and I really enjoy getting to spend time with the customer on the phone as he begins his project. Um, my job, as I look at this new customer, if I get a new customer on the phone, is I want to make his job as easy as I can. I
Hmm.
want to keep him from making pitfall mistakes that many others have already made. Um, uh, I want to give him an understanding of different sections, different parts groups, and how he might organize his time when he begins the project. So in that, we do all, whether it's Matt or Jens or myself, we do spend a bunch of time trying to help the guy, get off on the right foot. And that makes all the difference in the world when you're doing a project. As you know, when you're doing a project, if you start off on the right foot, then you're not going to be backtracking nearly as much. And
Hmm.
that backtracking can be painful and it can be very expensive.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do. And that's kind of what I do. So I'm on the phone, I'm answering emails. It's much more difficult than an email because sometimes the amount of detail that you want to go into and discuss, you have to write way too much on an email to do that.
Hmm.
And especially with the customers that we have overseas, it's not uncommon that, for me, that I pick up the phone and I'm going to call them. And luckily, most of our customers overseas that we deal with can speak English.
Hmm.
And some of them are very apologetic about their English. And I usually have to explain to them, that, hey, whatever language you're speaking is much, much better than, I could do
Yeah,
with it. So
exactly.
there's no need to apologize.
Your
But,
Moroccan is way better than my, or my,
oh, yeah,
yeah, your English is way better than my Moroccan.
and we do have, customers and, all over from Saudi Arabia. Don't get too many from Morocco. A lot of United Arab Emirates,
Hmm.
of course, all of the European countries. Um, and today, I think I was on the phone to Spain. I was on the phone to probably Holland, the UK. It just, you never know where you're going to be talking to somebody. But
Yeah, no, so how has the parts supply business changed from when you first got there? And I think I understand. Let me try and characterize it that probably when you got started, it was a lot of new old stock and maybe takeoff parts and things like that that would go get gathered or bought up. Maybe a store would close and or like a dealership would close and you get parts from them, or maybe a surplus auction, you could get some parts, or stuff was coming from Europe. I know there's still boxes with Lend Lease tags and stuff in
yeah,
some of your buildings, and kind of from there. And it seems like now there's a lot more reproduction parts, and
well,
you guys are making some of them too.
it's very true. When I started over 30 years ago, that we knew, Dave knew especially, Dave knew that there was a window of time, I think, that if there was a possibility of buying a large bunch of parts from somebody, that opportunity wasn't going to be there forever. And so, he would pursue it. And we did make some very, very large investments, to the points, where we had to build buildings to put the parts in because we didn't have any room for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back 30 years ago, as I tell people now, back then, the number of guys who were restoring, putting back together a World War II truck was quite different than it is today. Today, we see not nearly as many guys that are working on World War II stuff. There's a lot more guys that are working on M-series stuff. And then, of course, the civilian power wagon, has been solid all the way through, in all the years. And like you say, because we had so many NOS parts, we sold a lot of them. And as we look back, I think, Dave would say, yeah, we gave a lot of them away because, when you start figuring out as time passes, what it costs to replace a part that you had a lot of them that were surplus, but now you're forced with, there's a demand for it, but you have to look at, can I make it? And what's it going to cost me to make the part? And how many of them do I have to make? And you got to put a pencil to that and say, okay, so we can do it. As I tell customers, we can make anything. There's nothing that you can't make, but you have to be able to turn it around fast enough to be able to get your money back out of it. Otherwise, you're just lighting money on fire, and that's what's going to happen.
Right. It may you may have to make 1,000 of them, and the demand for it is in the hundreds or tens.
Right. Yeah. So it becomes, challenging. Now, luckily, the aftermarket for parts in general in automotive has increased greatly over the years. So there are more and more manufacturers that are making different things, whether it's weather strip, or whatever, they're electronic parts, or there just are more and more people that make those. Now, you and I both know, if you buy a brand new vehicle, the manufacturers are essentially under, I won't call it contract, but they're kind of expected that for the first 10 years of the vehicle, that they will make the high usage parts so that if you need the part, that you can buy it, that you can get it. But after that period expires, they're no longer very obligated to do that, which is why the aftermarket industry has grown and filling in the gap there for that. And there's still a lot of parts that are, as guys work on these old things, that are still used and made today. They may not be made in large quantities. They may be getting harder and harder to find, which is certainly true. And we work with different companies at different times, and because they don't want to make them, because they themselves are faced with the same problem. They cannot get the money back out of it quick enough. So sometimes, we'll have to try and figure out creative ways to go together and see what we can do on making stuff. It's a challenge.
And I think the one thing people don't realize is all the other vendors and parts dealers, let's say for Power Wagons or Jeeps, like you're competitors, but you're also allies in many ways in terms of getting your quantities up to be able to manufacture things and sharing and completing out each other's product lines.
Yeah, you have to, you have to be willing to work with people. We're as they say, we're kind of all in this together.
Right.
And whether you like it or not, you learn over time that it's much more to your benefit if you can do that. It's much more to your benefit.
Right. And in the end, all boats rise with the tide.
Yeah. So that's definitely the case. And if you look around in the automotive industry, that's nothing unique. Just, I don't care what it is, if let's just say, you want to go buy a water pump for a 350 Chevrolet. Well, you and I both know that there's all kinds of places I can go buy that water pump. And the reason there's all kinds of places that are going to go buy that water pump is because there's all those different outlets that essentially are giving the manufacturer enough volume that he can afford to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So them working together that way, is making it possible.
Right. So, the one thing I want to get your comment on this, in that the value of a civilian power wagon when you first started in the business versus today, it's crazy.
It has changed a lot. People ask us, and I can tell you that there's still a file at the office of, we sold a lot of trucks years ago, and I can remember selling many of them. But that was the time when there wasn't the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dave, again, on others, whether it was a Jeep guy, a power wagon guy, an international guy, whatever, they all had their own junkyard dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys are always beating the bushes, and they're always looking for stuff, and when they would find, man, on a fence row, there's 3 beautiful trucks, they would try to buy them if they could. And because, the values were not a lot back then, you could buy it, and you could pay a semi guy to come in, and you could somehow get it loaded. So you could put 3 vehicles on a semi, and you could bring them home, and you would have obviously some money in it, but you could get them, put a little money into them, work them, to where they kind of get them moving around a little bit. And it was a good then project vehicle for somebody to buy.
Yeah. Is it Bob Jones? He told me the story of I think he had a WC7 command car that he got through you guys, and that he bought it, and it came with a whole bunch of new old stock parts,
right,
that you guys had, and it was basically just like a kit, almost, when he picked it up. And the one thing that really strikes me from when I was there in 2002 to maybe the last time I was up there was probably 2019 probably.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, is just, you used to just have a yard full of vehicles, and now it's fairly small. Like, you guys have really taken it down.
Yeah, vehicle wise, it's just, again, it's the numbers. The numbers don't work for buying vehicles and hauling them and having to work on them to get them ready as a project vehicle. It's just too much money tied into something that you may get back, but or you may get the money back, but there's no money to be made in it.
Right. And it seems like they're just parts trucks there. So if somebody needs some random part, you can just go get it. And I remember that the half ton, there was just probably half of a football field size area full of half tons. And now it's probably a basketball court, if that.
Yeah, it's gotten much smaller on those. And of course, what we know, and this, and that is that, of course, the half ton series was built for 1 year. And because it was built for 1 year, the number of those trucks that are out there isn't huge. And, so they're the first ones to start to disappear. And I've told many a customer when they buy, World War II half ton, I hope that, number one, it's got a good body and a good frame. If it's got that, you got something going. The rest of the stuff we can work with, and, one way or another, we can get it all to where it's up and going and it can be used and pretty close to back in the condition that it might have been in. But, that day is getting pretty tough for those old vehicles.
Right. You either got to make it yourself, or you got to get lucky and find a body somewhere.
Yeah.
Or get a pattern and have someone else make it for you.
Yeah. And that happens. Our yard, of course, now is, like you say, we still have a lot of parts vehicles that we have in the yard. And it's always amazed me that, there still are a lot of parts in the yard.
Yeah, I'm actually sharing a picture of Fairfield.
Yeah.
Your fair city.
Yeah, our fair city.
And then let me just kind of zoom in on Vintage. So if people have never been there,
We cover about 19 acres.
so this is Vintage basically right here.
That's street. Yeah, all the
And
way
it
through
kind of goes
there.
down to here, and then you guys have this space over here, I believe.
Yeah, we have across the street, we have another lot right there. Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
a lot right there.
let's go through. There we go.
That's probably I don't know how old that particular photo is, but they
Yeah, I
take
would
those
say
every
it's
so many
older
years.
because a lot of these
Yeah,
vehicles are no longer there.
right. Yeah,
Um,
that's an old photo.
but
But
this
there
is
are
the
still
main building
actually
in here, and that's where most of your parts are. Your desk is probably about right here.
yeah, there's in there, there's parts there. In fact, actually we've got let me just see if I can see it now. Yeah, we've got, I don't know how many buildings now that we have parts in, but there's quite a few buildings that have parts in them.
Yeah, and some people may have the
One,
image that
two,
it's just,
three,
one big shop, and
4,
it's
5,
there's really a lot of different things all over the place. And I would
6.
say probably the only people that know exactly what's there is probably you and Dave.
Well, I'm gonna beg that off. I don't think that's true anymore.
Okay.
I've been working from home for the last almost 2 years. But anyway, I mean, I know where a lot of stuff is. The guy who probably knows the most in terms of where everything is, I've certainly, our head guy for the parts area, Corey, is going to know
Hmm.
more than anybody what's there and what's not there, probably. Um, um, Obviously, Jens knows where a lot of this stuff is. Kai, his brother, knows where a lot of this stuff is. Matt's going to know where a bunch of it is. But over time, what happens, is things have to move in order to make space for something else. And then, that changes it. And if you're not out there knowing where something got moved, then you go to look for it. It's not where it was.
Right. So basically, if you come in from the north side, you come in here,
Right.
and there's this field over here of civilian
That's
power wagons.
That's actually today, it's mostly all W series trucks. That's going to be Power Giants, which is probably 57 to 60. And then your W series trucks, W100, 200, 300s.
Hmm.
That's going to be, most of those are up in that area there.
And then the shop is here.
There's a big 4-bay shop there. Yeah.
Hmm. And then this building's full of parts.
Yeah, that building's full of parts.
And then there's the main building. These buildings are full of parts. The machine shop is kind of here.
Yeah, that's kind of a machine shop, and they do indoor freight work shipping there.
Okay.
Because when it's cold outside, you got to be able to get inside if you're working on freight.
And some of this over here is like garage space, if I remember.
The building, go back there, the building right there, that building has at least, that has quite a few parts in it. That's got a lot of parts in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been in there. And then
Yeah, there's a lot of parts in there now.
this one's kind of a garage space.
That's more of a garage space, but there are also parts in there too.
Yeah, parts everywhere. And then you go over here across this, and there are just pallet racks.
Yeah, that's a big building full of parts as well.
And you got some more vehicles over here, and this is kind of where the half tons are currently.
Yep, that's where the half tons generally are.
And then I think 3/4 tons were kind of over here, is what I remember.
And
these were probably maybe M series.
That's mostly all M series in that area there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has, kind of a certain structure in terms of the way it's laid out, which definitely makes it easier when you're starting to look for something.
Right. Kind of zoom in here, maybe a little bit more. Here, let's go this way. Nope, not that way. Yeah.
There used to be, if you want to know a little history here, there we go. Okay, the big building right there, where the cursor is, where the office is and all that.
So this is the main door.
You're right. Now that building, years and years ago, before David bought the property, that was a pole building. That was a concrete plant storage building. And there used to be a rail line that came essentially through the north end of the property where the W series trucks are, and kind of ran along that fence line area there. And then of course they bring the cars in and they would unload the concrete into the building. And they took that line out. I don't know how many years ago it was. Oh golly. It was around, probably a good 30 years ago that line came out. Yeah. So they took that out.
And then this is your other building over here.
That's another big building over there. That's that yard has some trucks. It has a lot of the M601 parts, things, and some beds, lots of bedsides and things like that back in there.
And then let's just kind of go the entrance over here. So this is what you see.
Yeah, you see that big sign that's cut out of I believe that sign, if I remember right, Dave said that was cut out of a carryall roof. Now, if you know Tim, you know that they didn't have a metal roof. Okay.
Yeah, it should be like a fiber roof on a carryall.
Yeah, there's actually it's what do they call it? It's like a it's a kind of a press board, and then there's canvas that's stretched over the top. But what you see on a lot of old carryalls, it's somebody's welded in across the top of it, a piece of metal. And Dave took that, I believe, out of a carryall that they'd done that to, and then had it cut. Vintage Power Wagons cut into it, so then it was hung up.
Okay, so let's go back down over here, because there's something else that people who are familiar with vintage know all about, and that's this side. Tell me what goes on here.
Where are we at now? This is the
Fairgrounds.
Okay. So, over the many years, we've had quite a few Power Wagon rallies, and the Fairgrounds is typically the hub for where we congregate, and where we do things. We do truck pulls that we've done in the past and things like that. When they have the rally, they're talking this year about what they're going to do this year. They're working on the plans and how that's all going to shape up. There's a grandstand area that's there's actually an arena that's over to the left. Yeah, right there where that shiny new roof is, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's, I think, no, that's the barn. No, it's off to the right. You're right. It's off to the right. No, there.
These areas?
By those trees. I think it's in that area there. There's a kind of an open air arena that's there. And that's where we've had oftentimes the big pork chop barbecue that everybody loves.
Right here. It'd be this building right here.
Yeah, the Iowa pork chop barbecue, which, yeah, that's that building right there. Because but anyway, it's true. We use that. And then also there's camping. You can kind of see the roads back there. And there are lots of different Power Wagon owners that come and they bring their trailers and things like that. And they camp back there. And there's a shower house and things like that at the Fairgrounds. It's actually pretty nice. So yeah, so
this has been kind of my spot right in here.
Oh, okay.
And it works pretty well. I mean, the shower facility, there's one here and there's one like right over here.
Yeah.
And there's porta potties and stuff. And it's just it's a really just fun week.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I'm going to miss it this year because of MVPA, because they conflict. But
yeah,
well, and go ahead.
That's probably partly our fault in a way, because we didn't list that we were going to do a Power Wagon rally until I don't know, it was probably later. And I know when you have a convention, you have to make decisions in terms of being able to get a facility.
Right.
So I'm sure that they were kind of, they had to make a choice, and they were looking at schedules and they didn't see anything posted conflicting. So that's what they did. So
you said you were at, now how many rallies have there been? 31 maybe? Is that right?
I think it's around there. I think it's 31. I lose track.
But you said you were at the first.
I was at the first one. The very first rally, what happened was I was not working for the company yet. and David asked me if I would take photographs. So we're talking, I had a Ricoh 35 millimeter camera. And so I said, sure, I'll try and get pictures of all the trucks. And I did, I think I got most of them. That was quite the eye opener for Dave, because he was really surprised at how many people actually came, number one, and how many people actually brought their trucks, that.
Yeah, and I think I've been
didn't
3
have
times.
any idea.
I've been 3 times, and I said when I finished my WC51, I was going to take it to Rally, and then I came the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And the other thing that if you've never been to Rally is the Walmart Supercenter is literally right across the road. So if you don't want to if you want to cook every day, you can just walk across the street, go to Walmart, pick up your food, walk back over here, and cook it on your fire. So
yeah, it's pretty convenient.
And then if you don't want to, there's lots of restaurants and things like that. And then somewhere along in here, there's the where is it? Trying to find the ice cream place.
Oh yeah, the dairy bar.
Okay, there's Hy-Vee. Okay, I'm getting my bearings here. It'd be right in here. No.
Let's see, Dollar Tree.
Riverside is here. It's
well, we're down. It's to the west of Power Wagons. So if you see where we're at,
yeah.
So you got to go further west, I believe. There's 9th Street. You got to go a little bit further. There's the Imperial. You got to go further west, the other way.
Oh, okay.
To the right on your screen. Keep going. Let's see there. Let's see. No, we've gone too far. Where are we at?
It's just right up from that one big intersection where Pizza Ranch is.
It's right off of 9th, just to the west of 9th Street. Yeah, right there, Dairy Bar.
Yeah. This is Dairy Bar is like the Studio 54 of Rally. It's the place to see and be seen.
Yeah, and they serve a lot of ice cream, especially when the rally is here. There's a lineup of Power Wagons usually out there in the parking lot every night.
Yeah, usually this whole area is filled, and then it's filled over here, and they're lined up over here. And I very embarrassingly, in 2018, had my WC51 vapor lock like right here.
Oh, well, it happens.
And we had to tow it back into the parking lot. We fixed it right away, but so anyway, yeah, Dairy Bar, and there's always controversy about the cone, whether the cone is lighted up, whether it's spinning,
right?
Things like that. Yeah. So just one of those little Power Wagon things.
There's a pool there. You see the pool?
Yeah.
That's on the back side of the rec facility that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing that people don't, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but Fairfield is it's a pretty standard Iowa town, but it's just got some very unique idiosyncrasies. And with the university there, one of the things that they promote is the starting of businesses.
Yep.
And so every time you go to Fairfield, something has opened, something has closed. There's something interesting that's new there. And you just never know quite what it is. Like the last time I was there was this great little bakery that had opened that was wonderful for breakfast. And there was a new restaurant on the square. And it's a nice little place to go. And if you want fast food, you can get that also, but there's some decent restaurants. And of course, then there's the Hy-Vee, which is the big grocery store in town, which we have those here. I love Hy-Vee.
Yeah, Hy-Vee.
So
they have a restaurant there. A lot of people go out to breakfast sometimes at the Hy-Vee.
And they're known for their Chinese.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Chinese.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think the future is for the Power Wagon, for Power Wagons and the Power Wagon business?
Well, here's the funny thing. And people ask me this, that same question. In all of my years, I've never not had new customers that I've talked to almost every day. so that to me is, it's amazing. Where are all these people coming from? And there's still people finding trucks. We hear stories all the time about that. So I don't know that there's so many people that are interested in bringing old things, old cars, old trucks, whatever. SEMA has grown leaps and bounds. You're familiar with SEMA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for people who are not, basically that's the aftermarket, parts world. And that world would not have grown were it not that there are more and more people all the time that are essentially dragging something out of the weeds,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to try to bring it back to life. So, but I can tell, there's never been a day almost that I haven't talked to a new customer. So I would have never guessed that years ago that would actually happen, but it's true. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seems like, what was I looking at? Something the other day. Oh, there was a video. Oh, it was on Lemons. If you're familiar with the 24 Hours of Lemons, but they do a show called Lemons Car Spotting where people post random pictures of odd cars, and one of them there was a car. I think it was a 65 Cougar in it, but in the background there was an M37, another M37. Like there were a bunch of M series vehicles back there, and they're out there still. So
they're still there. It's amazing how many of those vehicles are still surviving.
Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do now that you're throttling back?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I don't think, like I said, I'm not going to just quit. I might become a menace to society if I have that much free time on my hands. So, but I'm sure the time will fill up. Friends of mine who have retired say, well, you think you're going to have all this free time when you retire, but you'll find out pretty quick your time will fill up.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly, my wife and I like to travel.
Mm-hmm.
We have a small itty bitty tiny travel trailer that we bought a little over a year ago from a company in Florida. It's essentially a bedroom on wheels, and it's given us certain freedom to travel. We pulled it, I think, almost 9,000 miles last year, going camping and exploring different things. So we definitely want to be able to do that, and that gives us a certain freedom. We both like the outdoors. We're not adverse to camping. We just don't want to sleep on the ground in a tent anymore.
Yeah, I totally get that. Totally get that now.
That day has passed.
Yeah, definitely.
But
so are you going to stay in Fairfield? Is that kind of your long-term plan?
Oh yeah. We will definitely stay in Fairfield. We like Fairfield. I could say though, the older I get, the more the southern warm climate calls me when it gets cold outside.
Mm-hmm.
So we're again in February. We're taking off for a couple of weeks to go to Florida. So we hook up a trailer and away we go.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we may do that for a longer period of time. As time moves forward, we'll just kind of see how that goes. And we also have, we have family on the East Coast. We have 2 girls and grandkids, so they're out there. And we spent the week of Thanksgiving in New York, in Brooklyn, and I was able, with my laptop and my phone, I worked for 3 days while I was there, remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we'll see how that all goes and what things. There's no shortage also of causes that one can donate time to.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll certainly do that. We both are very active in the church, so that's also something that we spend a lot of time with as well. And so yeah, and music is another love of mine. I picked up a guitar, I think, when I was about 10 years old, and I love to play. I don't get as much time to play, and I think as you get older, you start to discover that there's this thing, and I call it prime time. prime time is the hours during the day as you get older where you feel like you really can get something done. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, I watch myself on weekends, and hey, from about 10 to 2 or 10 to 4, depending on how I'm feeling, that's my prime time.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got something I want to get done or I want to do, that's my high energy, go for it time. Well, you realize that when you're working, daily, you can't do that. And by the time the day is, pretty well said and done, I'm not going to get a lot done after, dinner in the evening. I'm just not. That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to having more what I call prime time
Mm-hmm.
to do things. So whether it's out in the garage, in the yard, playing music, or hitching up a trailer and taking off for a few days with the wife to go camping somewhere, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Mm-hmm. And just so people know, you don't own a power wagon. You're, as you said, you're the bartender that doesn't drink.
I'm like the bartender that doesn't drink. Now, I should tell people that the Power Wagon is an amazing vehicle, and obviously I've learned to appreciate it probably as much as anyone has, even though I don't own one. And I'm very utilitarian minded. So it's people that own Power Wagons, over time, they'll pretty much tell you that one of the major reasons that they own it is because it's a utility.
Mm-hmm.
It does things for them, it hauls firewood, it helps plow their quarter-mile driveway, all these different kinds of things that they do with the Power Wagon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a city dweller. I live a mile from the office, and for me, pretty much it's not. I don't have a major use for it as a utility.
Mm-hmm.
So my practical bent
So
said,
you didn't have to defend it that much. Well, and let me tell you a story. I'm sure you're familiar with Hemmings Motor News.
Absolutely.
And I grew up with Trent Hemmings, whose dad was Ernie Hemmings.
Right.
Who started Hemmings Motor News. And he ran a Model T, Model A parts business, and he got tired of answering the phone for people wanting to find other people's parts that he wasn't selling. So he finally just put everything into a newsletter, and that's how Hemmings Motor News got going.
Right.
Ernie never owned a collector car.
Yeah.
The guy who started the greatest publication on collector cars never owned anything other than a typical family Buick Regal or some like a basic family car. I think my friend growing up, I think they bought him a brand new Chevette,
mm-hmm.
4-door, and we thought that was the bomb. So anyway, you're in good company with Ernie Hemmings there.
I'll tell you a cute little story that, again, some people don't know about. When you mentioned Hemmings, as you probably know, that Hemmings has what they call the Great Race every year. Well, there's a college. It's called Alfred State College. If you're not familiar with them, you might look them up. Alfred State
I've never
College.
heard of the state of Alfred.
Yeah, it's in New York.
I missed it on the map.
But it's a great school, and basically it's a school that essentially teaches a lot of the trades, and they have a strong automotive department there at that particular school. And one day we got a call from one of the teachers there who said he had some kids who wanted to take this old Power Wagon that they had and put it together and put it into Hemmings Great Race. So they rebuilt this Power Wagon, and they put the 3/4 cam in it. They put disc brakes and power steering, and they changed the gear sets to 489s and did all kinds of stuff with it. And that truck, I believe, has competed, I think it's 3 times in the Hemmings Great Race with different classes doing it. But I just thought, every year I'd be watching to see where this old Power Wagon, how it was going to do and how it was going to fare. And by golly, the kids, they did a pretty good job, and they managed, I think, most of the years, I think they made it through the race.
Yeah, well, that's a reflection on them, and it's a reflection on the toughness of the Power Wagon. So
Yeah, and these kids had to, they had to do their homework, and they had a good teacher that worked with them, and it's a great school. I recommend it for people that are out that East Coast that have an inclination, that's because literally they have employers standing in line to get many of the graduates that come out of that school.
yeah, because they have hands-on experience
They have hands-on experience.
and a good reputation. So
Yeah,
okay, well, we've been going about an hour here. It seems like it's been about 10 minutes. So
yeah, I know.
let me go ahead and just kind of wrap this up here. Steve, good luck on your retirement. Great
Yeah,
talking to
thanks.
you. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who know you, but they don't know you.
Yeah.
And this hopefully this will help kind of fill out that picture of who that guy is that who ask all sorts of questions about their truck that they never pondered before, just to make sure they get the right part.
That's what we try to do.
Yeah. So okay. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in this episode of the Peep Show. And if any other people would like to come on, just let me know. We talked quite a bit about vintage power wagons today, but I'm not endorsing one thing or the other. They've got a heck of a lot of my money at this point, um, but anyone else would like to come on, just let me know and I'll schedule it. So, okay. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks, Steve. And I will catch everybody on the next one.
You're welcome, Tim.
Uh-huh.